It is 10 o'clock, so we will get started and got a wonderful group of participants here. Thank you all so much for coming. Welcome, of course, to our program. If this is your first time attending, we are so happy to have you. Thank you so much for making this a part of your day. I think you're going to enjoy it, and I hope that you feel right at home at our virtual Coffee with a Curator program. And just so that you all know, the recording of last week's program is now available on YouTube, on the KSU MARB YouTube page. I can put you can just type in KSU Museums, Archives, and Rare Books into YouTube and it'll come up, but I can send the link if you need it, if you can't find it. So feel free to share that with any folks who you think may be interested. It was a wonderful discussion last week. So we will go ahead and jump in. I am so excited about today. I'm a little too excited. So as Maggie knows, we have spent so much time on this and it's going to be great.
It's been hours.
Yes, hours, multiple work days. It's going to be awesome. But first things first, let's go ahead and get started with our Where's Andrew segment. And Andrew, I apologize to you because I realize I don't give you much heads up. Andrew finds out about the theme right when y'all do. I forgot to email you ahead of time, so I'm sorry about that. But Andrew likes a challenge, so it's fine. Okay, Andrew, I see some of my favorite things in the background there, some of those yellow backs.
There's definitely a lot of Nancy Drew behind me, and that's sort of a big theme that I went with today.
You went with Nancy Drew. Okay, well, I have some good guesses, but so, all right, well, this should be easy in terms, because sometimes the geography is difficult to determine. So we are in the United States.
Yes.
Yes. I think okay, well, I have a guess.
Okay.
Are you at a university?
No, I'm not.
You're not? Oh, okay. Are you in the Midwest?
Yes, I am.
No?
Okay.
Oh, Nancy, did you say something?
I said, is it Chicago?
It's not Chicago, no.
I have a couple guesses, but I might be cheating because of all the research I did. So
Okay, are you at a public library?
This is actually a public library, yes. This is actually a whole Nancy Drew room. I found an article from February of 2020 saying it was opening soon, but I don't know if that was true or not.
It's true or not.
Things kind of happened. So
exactly. So we don't know if it actually opened. That's okay. Are you in Iowa?
No.
You're not? Oh man. Okay. All right.
Are you in Texas?
No.
Oh, Ohio.
Yes, I am in Ohio.
Oh.
Columbus?
No. There was a war fought over this place, if it helps.
There was a what?
A war was fought over this place, if it helps.
Trivia thing happening.
It's in Toledo, Ohio?
Yes.
I know. Okay. I know the connection now. I was struggling. I know the connection now. Mm-hmm. But I still don't know the library.
It's the Toledo Lucas County Public Library?
That's the one. It is the Jennifer Fisher collection of Nancy Drew. It was recently donated within the past several years and was scheduled to open mid-2020. But I haven't actually found when it did actually open. But this is it. There's a large collection of vintage Nancy Drews along with research materials on Nancy Drew books.
I need to go there.
And the handout is in the chat.
Okay, that is exciting. And for those of you who are new, Andrew always goes above and beyond and provides a handout for us. So that is now in the chat available for download. That is awesome. That is really cool. I really want to find out if this place is open. I really want to go.
Joellen, you should look it up on Google. There are some amazing pictures.
Really? Oh, that's so exciting. Yay. Thank you so much, Andrew. That's a great one. That fits perfectly into our time today, because as you all know, this is going to be a bit of a showdown because we are going to be putting the Girl Scouts fiction series up against Nancy Drew and up against the Babysitters Club. So it's going to be a lot of fun today. So for those of you who attended our program last year, you may remember that and Maggie, I think you led it. We had a wonderful discussion about the materials from the Girl Scout archives that landed here and that we were accessioning. So we talked about that. I think at one point too, we also talked about, the existence of, Nancy Drew and things like that. However, we didn't talk about some of the interesting connections between the two, between the Girl Scout series and other juvenile children's series. So anyway, we're going to do that today. And I think, honestly, it's this whole researching this topic has had me riding this constant wave of both nostalgia and regret, because I don't know many of us, I know some of us were Girl Scouts. I was a Brownie Scout. Did we have any Girl Scouts in here? Yep. Okay, so quite a few Girl Scouts. Did anyone know, and this doesn't count if you're on the Girl Scout archives, did anyone know that the Girl Scouts has been producing fiction books since the end of World War I?
No, never heard of them.
I just had no idea. And part of me, I cannot believe that, and when I was a Brownie Scout, fiction books were available. I just didn't know. In the chat, we've got a campfire girl in the...
I was just typing in there. Let me tell Tamara about some campfire girl stuff I learned.
Don't
but
worry,
it can wait.
You won't be left out. We will have some campfire girls represented today. But I just had no idea there were fiction books. Oh, another campfire. Oh, yeah, campfire series. Exactly. I just had no idea that there are these fiction series about Girl Scouts and campfire girls. So anyway, I feel like I missed out. But what Maggie and I have been noticing as we've been kind of going through these and enjoying them and spending time and accessioning them is that many of these fiction books kind of over time actually mirrored other popular children's book series, especially those that were targeted more so for girls at one point, like the Nancy Drew series and the Babysitters Club series and the Babysitters Little Sisters Club series. So anyway, I find that to be fascinating. So before we begin officially, I'd really like to give a shout out to Maggie Thomas, because without her, we would not have this incredible collection of Girl Scout books. And I would also love to give a shout out to the Girl Scout archives. Thank you all so much for the work that you've been doing to preserve the history of Girl Scouts and for sharing some of the duplicate copies with us, because it's just a wonderful collection to have. So without further ado, we'll get started. Maggie and I are going to be having we're going to play off each other today and have a little joint presentation. Since you can't see the materials, we can't touch them together. I have some really cool things scanned. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of those materials here, mostly just all images. Sorry, one second. Let me try to get this. Okay, I'm going to attempt to share. Okay, so here we go. Ready for the showdown. So the first thing we are going to talk about today, or we're going to look at, see if I can move this ahead. Okay, the Girl Scouts rivals. What a perfect time. This perfect lead into campfire girls and all that. The Girl Scout rivals. Okay, this is one of the first Girl Scout fiction books, or one of the earliest Girl Scout fiction books that we have here at KSU. The Girl Scouts Rivals was published in 1922. And we see here that this one was actually looks like a birthday gift from Papa to Dorothy, which I just love. We love those kind of inscriptions in there. And then we see this this illustration in the front of Girl Scouts looking very focused and intense. That looks like a really intense troop. So we see that, the waving of flag. And this we see here on the left, sorry that got a little cut off there, but we see through the title page that this was written by Edith Lavelle. And we also see here too, on the right, it actually lists the other books that are part of this series, this Girl Scout series. So the Girl Scouts Rivals is the last one. We've also had Girl Scouts at Miss Allen School, Girl Scouts at Camp, Girl Scouts Good Turn, Girl Scouts Canoe Trip, all sorts of things. So cool thing about Edith Lavelle, I think I'm saying her name correctly, I'm not sure. I found this, Maggie and I found this in the back, one of the back advertisements in the book. It says that Edith Lavelle was actually the director of the Girl Scouts of Philadelphia. So interesting, we know a little bit about the author, but let's go back to the title page for a minute. So I was like, one thing that I like to do when I look at books is not just look at things like title and author, but also get really into the publisher. Because especially when you're looking at children's books and books that are children's series, publishers often played a really interesting role. So is anyone familiar with A.L. Burt Company? Anyone know about that publisher or heard of that publishing company before? Maybe.
Yeah, I have a lot of the books.
Yeah. And are they Girl Scout books or just general books?
Both. I have most of the Edith Lavelle series and some of the Mildred work. But yeah, Bert did a lot of series for boys and girls.
That is exactly right. I didn't know that beforehand. So I did some research, and A.L. Burt Company was a New York-based publisher founded by Albert Levi Burt in 1883. So interestingly, he began working as a traveling salesman, and he noticed a need for inexpensive reference books. So he started in that, but then he expanded to popular fiction and reprints of popular fiction. And in 1887, he actually founded the Boys Home Library, which was a series of juvenile paperbacks that cost about 25 cents each. So I borrowed this image. This is not ours. Everything I show is ours, but I actually borrowed this from the Horatio Alger Society. So this is an example of what a lot of the books that, or some of the books that A.L. Burt Company published, these Boys Home Library books. However, interestingly, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of something called dime novels. Well, in the next few decades, dime novels became very popular. They literally were just a dime. And so they kind of started weakening the appeal of his slightly more expensive juvenile fiction books. And so later in the 20th century, or into the 20th century, in the early 20th century, excuse me, Burt's Company, it fully incorporated, and then they expanded further into the juvenile fiction market and decided that they were going to compete with the Stratmeyer Syndicate. So for those of you who, again, attended last year, Stratmeyer Syndicate, that may sound a little bit familiar. We got a little connection there. But the Stratmeyer Syndicate, most of their books were published by Grosset and Dunlap and Couples and Leon. And so A.L. Burt Company was like, well, we're going to start something a little bit. So we have a little competition starting, which is fun. So wanted to kind of give you a little bit about the publisher and why that's important. And that's actually going to come back later on in our discussion. But Mackie and I found these wonderful advertisements in the back of the book. So we see all of these different series that A.L. Burt Company published. So we see that. Sorry, and let's see, I'm just gonna see if we can. If y'all don't mind muting, if your phone is ringing, that would be helpful. Thank you so much. Anyway, so we see all of these different series that A.L. Burt Company was in charge of publishing. We got a Boy Scout series here, the Boys Allies with the Army, the Boy Allies with the Navy, the Girl Scout series. We've got Marjorie Dean College series, all sorts of things.
I have a couple of the Marjorie Dean books.
Oh, you do? Wonderful. So we see all these different series. And then also I wanted to show, because I told, there we go, Campfire Girls series. So Tamara, you don't have to feel left out at all. So we've got all these different series that were published. So I think it's kind of interesting. One thing I learned is that one series did especially well. This Boy Allies, I think, with the Army, and the Boy Allies with the Navy, I think because of its World War I connection. So Maggie, can you talk a little bit about, I think you know more of the history side, the connection to maybe wartime, perhaps why that would have been, I guess, of interest?
Yeah, the Boy Scouts were originally formed in England, and they came over and were formed here in America. And it was right before World War I started, and it was really started as kind of interest in getting the boys kind of like a ROTC, like a junior ROTC, like fighting on the home front because they were too young to go overseas or to go fight. And so they were very diligent about working with the Army and just being really patriotic. And a fun little story, Campfire Girls were formed in America in the same year, I think, as the Boy Scouts were. And Girl Scouts were not formed until like 2 years later. And so when the Girl Scouts formed, they actually approached the Campfire Girls and said, hey, would you like to join and be one group rather than two different organizations? And so the Campfire Girls at the time were like the sister organization of the Boy Scouts. And the Campfire Girls said, no, thank you, because they were so much larger than the Girl Scouts at the time. Mm-hmm. But now you look and see how large Girl Scouts were. And I think Campfire Girls probably could have benefited from it. But so yeah, that's why Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts were both formed originally, really to give the children something to do back here at home and feel like they were just being as useful and as patriotic as the older kids.
Thank you, Maggie. That's actually really interesting. And I think that I know I hadn't made that connection before, but that sheds a little bit of light on especially these series that are being published and why they have that connection. So next, I wanted to just read a little excerpt from, we're going to get to that in a minute. I want to read a little excerpt of the Girl Scouts Rivals from the first page. I love the way it begins. And it also tells us a little bit about the age that it was targeting. Okay, so this is the very first page, very first paragraph of the Girl Scouts Rivals, Chapter 1, Lily's Visit. A big touring car swung up to the station platform and stopped 2 inches from the end. In the driver's seat sat Marjorie Wilkinson. For the first time, she was taking the car out alone. A senior now at Miss Allen's boarding school, and having passed her 17th birthday, she was permitted full use of the machine, a privilege which her father had resolutely continued to refuse her for the past 2 years, although she had insisted that she knew how to drive. So I really love that. And I think also it's very, I think, like still relatable, probably. You're wanting to like tell your parents or your dad, I really can drive, and he doesn't want you to go drive. But interestingly, so she was 17. So this was definitely, and Maggie, I think you said early on, Girl Scouts were targeted toward older girls?
Oh, ages 10 through 18, I think.
Okay.
It wasn't until later that it got younger and younger.
I see. Interesting. So that's something that I think, we see a kind of a common situation happening, which is really fun. But also we're realizing, okay, so this, and I think this one, the Girl Scouts in this Girl Scout series, the Girl Scouts Rivals was the last one. So they said Miss Allen's boarding school, that would have, so girls that had been reading this would have been familiar with that. And maybe they had kind of grown up with the books maybe a little bit. So they would have been a little bit older.
Yeah, interesting point about this particular Girl Scout series. It took place during the summer of between each of the grades at school. So it followed the girls as they grew up in their troop and as they went through high school. But not during school, just during the summers, I think.
So actually, particularly the first one, at Miss Allen's school, there's a lot of that school life. And the series continues on when Marjorie goes off to college. She becomes like the equivalent of a troop leader. And then she actually becomes a Girl Scout executive, a professional worker.
Oh,
Yeah.
so the Marjorie. So the Marjorie in
yeah.
this is the Marjorie in the. Oh.
Yeah, it follows Marjorie all the way through. She's the one who got the troop started after there was all of this sort of sorority competition and hurt feelings, and she decides, let's bring in the Girl Scouts. It's democratic, kind of thing. So yeah, there's much more, but it all follows Marjorie and her friends.
Oh.
Yeah, so it follows year by year as they age, as they get older.
Yeah.
Whereas like Nancy Drew stays the same age. She's always a teenager,
Yeah.
And
And some of the girls, like Lily, it's mentioned there, is Marjorie's best friend. She's sort of the fat girl best friend. Sort of relate to, is it George and Nancy Drew? I'm not a Nancy Drew person, but and by the end of the series, some of the girls are engaged. One even may be married.
Wow. So it goes really far. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Because you're right. Nancy's friends had different, like, I think George was more of like I think Bess was more like high maintenance and whatnot. And that's interesting. So, but I also noticed too, that even though Marjorie is continuing, we see the author changes from Edith Lavelle to, it looks like Pauline Lester, which is really interesting too. We see a lot of, another theme of juvenile series, author changes seem to be prevalent.
That's interesting.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? So did the template for the plot vary more with those Marjorie Dean books than it did with, say, the Nancy Drew, where you had sort of there was a template in terms of each book was solving the mystery? So was it a little different in that very rarely was there anything mysterious. It was probably more, I'm trying to think of some of them, like in the Girl Scouts Rival, they're like at a camp where there's a competition for the girls to be chosen to like representative of a big national event. But a couple of them, I think, like the Girl Scouts on the Ranch or the Girl Scouts Vacation, I guess all of them have like sort of a rescue theme, whether it's helping the poor widow or taking in a girl who's poor and like helping her clean up her life and get an education. So it focuses a lot on the big good turn, helping the community, helping people, righting wrongs, that sort of thing.
That's really interesting to know. And kind of to go along, there's an interesting question in the chat from Maureen, were there known ghostwriters? Maggie and I have kind of been trying to figure this out, because some of the authors of not all, but a couple of the authors of the Girl Scout series that we're going to talk about today, very difficult to find any information about certain authors. And we are starting to wonder, perhaps, was it a ghostwriter situation? We're not sure on all of them, but Edith, I guess, was, as we saw, she was the director of the Girl Scouts of Philadelphia, but some of them, perhaps.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like with the, I can't think of it, but like people just change. Like I said, the book format stayed the same, but the authors changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and some others along those lines, it was part of the organization, that the publishers had set up.
Yeah, the whole Stratmeyer Syndicate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is fascinating. I wanted to get to one more point before we move on. Maggie, do you mind telling us, this is called, I have not read this book, but the Girl Scouts Rivals, like, what does that even mean?
So because it is the 5th book in this series and it follows the girls, through school as they get older, it focuses on Marjorie and her friend, her best friend Ruth. And there's really competitive. And then throughout the years, as the books go on, they get to the point where they almost hate each other. They're just, they're rivals. And so that's what it is. I had to research a little bit.
Yeah, that Ruth is trying to sabotage everything so that Marjorie doesn't get anything. Yeah.
So it just sounds like typical teenage kind of stabbing you in the back, best friends kind of thing.
Like Mean Girls, but
yeah.
That's so interesting, because I was thinking it was more, the Girl Scouts are rivaling another organization.
Yeah, it actually kind of sounds like the rivals of the entire Girl Scout group rather than 2 individual Girl Scouts who were rivals. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's fascinating. I'm glad you looked into that, because I was kind of assuming there. So we just talked about the Girl Scouts rivals actually in this series, but now let's think about maybe some of the Girl Scouts literary rivals, maybe. So let's talk about first this, we're going to fast forward. We were in 1922. Now we're going to go to the 1950s. And let's go to another Girl Scout series that was really well known, really popular, the Girl Scouts series by Mildred A. Wirt. And we see the Girl Scouts at Penguin Pass, at Singing Sands, and Mystery Mansion. So they were published in 1953, 1955, so 53, 55, and 57. All right, so kind of pumping them out there. Now let's take a look inside of these books. Let's just do Mystery Mansion. Sounds really fun. So let's just take a look inside this one. Oh my. I love the way that looks. And, it kind of, I don't know. Does it remind anybody of, for me, it reminds me a little bit of books I used to read as a child that were not Girl Scout books. But I'll just leave that there. So taking an up close look at Mystery Mansion, we see this lovely kind of frontispiece illustration here. And of a young girl looking kind of like suspiciously at a banister. And we also notice that we've got our title page here. Published by Couples in Leon. We talked about that publisher a little bit earlier, noting that that was one of the publishers of the Stratmeyer Syndicate. Interesting. So we're starting to see these same publishers making these series of children's books. I find that interesting. And then also we see this interesting, I know it may not look like much, but we see this 25 chapter structure, which actually, again, is very reminiscent of the early Nancy Drew series that were published. Some of the ones that were published later were revised into 20 chapters, but early on they were all 25 chapters. It was kind of like a formula, as we all had been discussing. So we begin with this exciting dialogue here and all sorts of things. So anyway, so I have to say, to me, when I first saw this reminded me of the Nancy Drew books. that I liked to read when I was young. Does anyone else see any similarities? Am I crazy? Or if you were a Nancy Drew reader?
I
don't
would
know.
probably mistake that girl for Nancy Drew if I didn't know any better.
Yeah, I just feel like there's something that's reminiscent of it to me. So interesting.
I don't. Yeah.
So just saying, but we can move on. So I think one of the best things to do then in that case, since we're thinking we're not sure if it really looks that way, is kind of to take a look at one. So thank you, Nancy. Our own Nancy has donated a collection of early Nancy Drew books and Honey Bunch and Bobbsey Twins. So we are so grateful to you, Nancy. This is one of yours. The Secret of the Old Clock, the first in the series of 1930. So here we are looking at, so this is the cover and the paste down, but let's take a look now. We kind of see we've got, again, a frontispiece where it has a quote from one of the pages of the books, an exciting moment in the book. And then we've got the title page. We've got a publisher, Grosset and Dunlap, so another publisher of Stratmeyer Syndicate. And then also we see this 25. So the chapters, the contents page looks a little bit different. But again, this book was published in 1930 versus what we just looked at, a Girl Scout book published in 1950, so slightly different. So, Andrew, I know that you might be aware of another connection, but we see, of course, the Nancy Drew books published by Carolyn Keene, and then, or written by Carolyn Keene, and then we also we took a look at the Girl Scouts at Mystery Mansion, written by Mildred A. Wirt. Andrew, would you like to reveal the connection? I know you know it.
Yes, this is part of my summer volunteer work this summer, and Mildred Wirt is Carolyn Keene and vice versa. I believe it was 20-something of the original 30 Nancy Drew books were actually written by Mildred Wirt under the pseudonym of Carolyn Keene.
Exactly.
So it's the same author.
Exactly. So I was so excited when Andrew found that out for us this summer. So yes, Mildred Wirt was actually Carolyn Keene from 1929 until 1947. I think that was her main stretch of being Carolyn Keene. She might have done it a couple other times, but she authored, as Andrew said, 23 of the earliest 30 Nancy Drew books. So Mildred Wirt, honestly, we can kind of thank her for essentially molding Nancy Drew's personality. So if we compare this 1950s book, if we were to read it, we might see some similarities in writing style to a Nancy Drew book from, the 30s, some of the early ones, like The Secret of the Old Clock and whatnot. So I just thought that was so cool. It's interesting that, again, we're seeing these connections between publishers, and some publishers were working together, others were in competition with each other, but we're also seeing a cross with with authorship too, which is fascinating. So Mildred Wirt was also responsible for writing the Brownie Scout series too. So not only wrote so these are just two examples. So she wrote books for the Brownie Scouts as well, which was targeted toward younger girls. So I think that's really, really cool. Now Maggie and I have another question, and we did not figure out the answer to this. So maybe you all can help us. But I'm going to take you all back again. So we were in the 1920s. Then we went to the 1950s and discovered Mildred Wirt / Carolyn Keene. Now we're back into the 1921. And this might just be a coincidence, but we were just so interested that the Girl Scouts Rally, published in 1921, was authored by Catherine Keene Galt. And we're like, well, that name is really interesting because it sounds creepily like Carolyn Keene. Is there any connection? Maybe not. But the funny part was we're like, well, let's go and do some research. Maggie, would you like to tell us all the research that you did about Catherine Keene Galt?
Hours of research. I could not find anything about a person at all existing named Catherine Keene Galt, other than she was the author of, the couple of these books, or a few of these books. I even did genealogy research. Like, I was looking her up on Ancestry. I was trying to find obituary, family members from, Ancestry, anything. And Catherine Keene Galt, Catherine Keene Galt, Katie Galt, I looked up everything I could think of. Did not exist anywhere that I could find. And I got really frustrated, and I was like, well, maybe Catherine Keene was also a pen name. I mean, it was really hard putting stuff together. Yeah.
It was very difficult. I even checked Library of Congress name authorities, and Catherine Keene Galt did come up, but only in connection to like the Girl Scouts rally. There was just nothing we could find. So I don't know. Someone asked about, these other pen names or ghostwriters. So maybe Catherine Keene Galt didn't really exist. I don't know. We're just not sure. I don't want to say that because I have no idea, but we're struggling to find.
Well, a couple interesting things I did find out researching. So Mildred Wirt was born in 1905, and the earliest book that she was given credit for writing was in 1927, and her pen name at that time was Alice B. Emerson. And so in 1927, she had just gotten through with college. She had just finished her master's, I think it was, or she was working on her master's. So the earliest, I don't know, I was trying to put together Catherine Keene with Mildred Wirt. Maybe she said, oh, we can use the pen name Carolyn Keene, because Catherine Keene used to be my old pen name. But I don't know if that's true. Catherine Keene Galt, in 1921, Mildred Wirt was only 16. So I don't know if she would have written these books or not. But she was probably very influenced by Catherine Keene. And I found out that by October 1st of 1929, the character name of Nancy Drew and the pen name of Carolyn Keene had both been decided on. And then it was just a couple days later that Mildred Wirt started writing the first Nancy Drew. I could not find anywhere, how did they decide on Carolyn Keene? I mean, where did Carolyn Keene come from? So I can only make that assumption that Carolyn Keene came from Catherine Keene. I don't know. It's a fun mystery.
It is a fun mystery because the names are just so similar, but we just don't know, especially since, Mildred would have been a little young when this one was written. But it just seems like, Maggie, if we could crack that, we should write an article or something. Maureen, maybe Mildred had an older writer sister. Who knows? There's just so many mysteries. So anyway, this is its own mystery, but we just wanted to bring that up. We're not sure about that author, if she was a real person or if it was a pen name, but we just think it's really interesting that it's a similar name. So that's a cool thing. So wanted to just lay out those connections between Girl Scouts and Nancy Drew series, because if you collect enough of them, you'll start to notice kind of some similarities and really wonderful connections, not only just in terms of authorship and publishing, but also in just the stories and language and kind of author's tone. So it might be a fun collecting area for some of you all who maybe are interested in juvenile literature or already have some. And again, thank you so much, Nancy, for donating. We've made very great use of the Nancy Drews that you donated and have added to it as well. So thank you so much. Wonderful. So next, we're going to move on to another part of our showdown. Yay! Girl Scouts versus Babysitters Club. So for those of you who are millennials that this might be very, very exciting, because this was definitely us when we were young. So I don't know if y'all are familiar. You might have heard of it, but I don't know if anybody are familiar. I know Helen read Babysitter's Club, and I was a big reader of the Babysitter's Little Sister. So these were series of novels that were written by Anne M. Martin, and Anne M. Martin is a real person. I think some of them may be ghostwritten later on, but I think she wrote most of them. Anyway, from 1986 to 2000, and it was a series about a group of friends that lived in the fictional town of Stony Brook, Connecticut, and they ran a local babysitting business. Original members were Christy, Marianne, Claudia, and Stacy. And then there were also spin-offs, like the Babysitter's Little Sister. So Karen right here was Christy's stepsister. So anyway, it became a spin-off series that was targeting younger girls. And this is a series that I mostly read when I was in like elementary school, probably around ages, 7, 8, 9. I was reading this. Helen, I hate to put you on the spot, but I know you were a big reader of Babysitter's Club. What made you like it? What appealed to you about it?
I was gifted a big stack of them from my older cousin when I was about 7. So that's when I started reading them. I mean, I loved that they were, girls who were had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. They were very well organized. And there were lots of different perspectives in the books because they would rotate through different narrators. And yeah, I mean, I thought that, and they were also like, they were in the very beginning, they're 12, but then like the later books, they're all 13. So, to a 7 or 8-year-old, those are like big kid stories, so.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the big kid stories.
Yeah. And I did identify most with Christy because I was also bossy and unfashionable. So, she was the leader, so anyway.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing. So interestingly, some of the later Girl Scout series that were published in the 90s, love the way these look, but they look a little bit like they could be similar to a Babysitter's Club series or the Babysitter's Little Sisters Club series, which I think is awesome. So we noticed kind of that like portrait look, that slanted portrait look of the covers, and we see the girls they look like a group, and like Helen said, different narrators kind of go through. Same thing with this with these Here Come the Brownies series. We've got different girls getting a chance to be the protagonist of the story. So again, something that would have been really I think really appealing to girls during the 90s that were kind of used to these type of series again. So these were both published. So the Babysitter's Little Sister and the Babysitter's Club they were all published by Scholastic, which is its own behemoth, which we all love. But then Here Come the Brownies were published by Grosset and Dunlap, which again was one of the major publishers of the Stratmeyer Syndicate, which is again really cool connection. We also see here diversity being kind of starting. I think that there was a little bit of diversity in Babysitter's Club, and I think later on there were more, but we start to see here kind of a diverse look, which we didn't see in the early Girl Scout fiction series. So we're starting to see that. So I think that's really interesting. And then for those of you who are wondering, like, oh, was this just, something in the past, or was this actually, oh, I don't have my contemporary covers. I'm going to have to show y'all through here. We've got, sorry. Let me get this. Okay. We've got some, if you can see my little square, some of my contemporary covers that Maggie has acquired. This Nancy Drew, I think, was from like, I can't remember, Maggie, which one is 2006 and which one is 2016.
I think the Girl Scout one was 2016 and the Nancy Drew was 2006
Yeah.
or 2007, something like that.
2007, yeah. So these are still being published and they're still available, which I think is exciting. So we start to kind of see the contemporary look. Oh yeah, Helen, what's up?
I just needed to point out that the second Brownie book is titled Sarah's Incredible Idea, and the first Babysitters Club book is Christy's Great Idea. And I'm just wondering if the Brownies are trying to one up here or what's going on.
They found a formula and it worked.
Those are fighting words if I ever heard of them. That is, I didn't catch that. That's a great point. You're right. Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I saw that, but I didn't think anything of it, but Helen pointed it out. Yeah, that's
Christy's great idea. Sarah's incredible idea. Very suspicious. I love it. That's really interesting.
Is Sarah starting like a pet sitting service? Because honestly, that's what that photograph or like that illustration looked like to me.
I have it. I have it right here. It says, Shy Sarah has a great idea for her Brownie Scout troop, but what if nobody likes it? Will she be brave enough to speak up?
It does look like a pet, instead of a Babysitters Club, it's Pet Sitters Club.
Oh my goodness, that's probably what, I bet you that's what it is. I'm like that. So we're going to have to check this out because it's right on my cart here. We're going to have to look and see. I bet you that's what it is. That is so cool. So as you can see, which is so much fun because again, it's like a formula, kind of knowing what might appeal and what, these series that, had this brand attached to it and kind of, trying to do something that is it's more specific to Girl Scouts, but also would be appealing to Girl Scouts or Brownies of the time. So I think that's great. I think it's so much fun. So even though I called this a literary showdown, it is just, all in good fun. And it makes sense that they would want to do that. So last thing I wanted to show y'all, which is this web I made of everything we've talked about today. So if y'all would just indulge me for a second, we can kind of look at, I have a little speech ready of all of the connections we have. So we're going to start it with Girl Scouts Rivals right here. So Girl Scouts Rivals was published, and my arrows aren't always going in the right way, but it's fine. Girl Scouts Rivals was published by A.L. Burt Company, which competed with the Stratmeyer Syndicate, whose main publishers were Grosset and Dunlap and Couples and Leon. And the Stratmeyer Syndicate hired Mildred Wirt to write and essentially craft the early Nancy Drew mystery series from 1929 to 1947, which was published by Grosset and Dunlap. Later, Mildred Wirt, where are you? There she is. Let me find it. Wrote the Girl Scouts and the Brownie Scout series that were published by Couples and Leon that are also reminiscent of the Nancy Drew series that she wrote earlier that were published by Grosset and Dunlap and written by Carolyn Keene, whose identity was for a time Mildred Wirt. And the pseudonym Carolyn Keene sounds strangely like Catherine Keene Galt, even though we can't confirm that, who wrote the Girl Scouts Rally, which was published by Southfield Publishing Company, who also competed with Grosset and Dunlap, who published the Here Come the Brownie series that are reminiscent of the Babysitters Club.
Yay, that was awesome.
Yay.
That's a lot of research, Joellen. I'm so proud.
Thank you. Again, my arrows are not always going in the right way, but I know what I meant. So anyway, I love this. And this is the kind of, so when people talk about like, oh, how do y'all select books that go into the collection? This is how we do it. making tons of connections, because when you start a collection of books, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, or it's like, well, I don't know what to collect. But all you got to do, we just started with one book. We started with the Girl Scouts rally, and look where it took us, to all these different places. So that's really how rare book curation takes place. And that's the fun part of it. It is so much fun to do this. So anyway, I will stop sharing. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I have a couple links I want to put in. Maybe if you are interested, Maggie, I thought we could share the Vintage Girl Scout site.
Oh, yeah. And also, I just want to point out and give a shout out that Pamela and I, Linda Bishop, and Margaret Pascal are all from the Girl Scout Archives Committee. And I sent out an email inviting them today. And I'm glad they're here. Welcome, Girl Scouts.
Thank you. Thank you.
But also, yeah, vintagegirlscout.com is a fabulous site. And I just put the link in the chat. And there's specific pages for everything you could think of Girl Scout. And there's one link, the Girl Scout Library. And you go through different eras of their fiction books and nonfiction. Well, no, I think that one's separate. The handbooks and stuff is separate. But anyway, yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you again to our guests for coming. This has been so exciting. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. Does anyone have any comments or questions or anything that they found interesting about today?
I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing the connections.
Yeah.
It was really
I enjoyed finding all those connections.
Yeah,
really
it's so much fun. It's a rabbit hole and I love it. Yes. And thank you to Andrew too for doing some of that work for us. Andrew kind of did that. Andrew volunteered with us this summer and wrote a lovely bio of Mildred Word and kind of helped us figure out that connection. So thank you so much for doing that, Andrew. We really appreciate it.
One thing I wanted to add, the Nancy Drew, I found where the archives that they're located in across the country. Actually, the Mildred Wirt papers are located at the University of Iowa archives, and it's the Iowa Women's Archives, I think. So Mildred Wirt's personal papers are there, but the Stratmeyer Syndicate records are in 3 different places. They were donated to the Yale, to the Beinecke Library, as well as the New York Public Library and University of Oregon. So Harriet, one of the daughters of Senior Stratmeyer, what's his first name?
Edward Stratmeyer.
Edward. Okay, so Harriet, his daughter, she's the one who donated to University of Oregon. Simon and Schuster publishing company, they're the ones who donated it to the New York Public Library. And then Nancy Axelrad, who worked for the Stratmeyer Syndicate for a long time, she's the one who donated it to Yale. So I just thought, and then Mildred herself is the one who donated it to Iowa. I thought that was interesting.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it popped into my head. I have a trivia for you. Ray Mitchell, who wrote the first Girl Scouts of the USA Browning Handbook, which was about 1950. Anyway, she was from Ackworth, Georgia, which is just right down the street from y'all.
Oh, and that's neat.
Yeah, I never was able to find very much about her. I found a little, but I just thought that was really cool that we have that Georgia connection to the first Browning Handbook. Before that, it was just leaders' handbooks, but the girls didn't get one until about 1950. And
we have that first Brownie handbook here in our collection too. Yeah.
Yes, I have mine. It's falling apart.
I did not know that. What a cool local connection.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Thank you so much. And Maggie, thank you for sharing the, as archivists, we're always interested in where the archival collections documenting this stuff ends up. And it sounds like this was definitely an instance of like split collections ended up, different places.
Now we know why you said Iowa.
Yeah, that's why I said Iowa.
Right.
Yeah, so as I was trying to search and figure out why Carolyn Keene and Catherine Keene Galt, that's when I found out where the specific collections and what archives they were in. And if I ever make a cross-country trip, I'm going to stop at every single one of those.
Yes, absolutely. So exciting. And I put into the chat the recording of last week's meeting. So another way you can get to it as well, if you go into YouTube and you just type in, KSU Museums, Archives, and Rare Books, you'll be able to see all of our videos come up. And it should be, I think, one of the first ones that comes up because I just put it up yesterday. Or should be one of our new videos, but this is the link. So if you want to share with anybody, please do. Please share these programs with anybody or recommend anyone attend who you think might be interested. So if this was your first time attending, thank you so much. And feel free if you decide that, I want this to be a part of my week, if I can, every week, feel free. I can add you to the listserv if you'd like to be. And that way you'll get the emails about the topics each week and you'll get the Zoom link even if you can't attend. So just let me know.
Also, if you have any ideas or requests for any topics,
Yes.
maybe we could do some more Girl Scout research and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm grateful that my books found a new home.
Yes, wonderful. Oh, and in the chat, interesting. Now that is too much.
It's just a funny connection sort of thing.
But
yeah,
Maggie, get on it.
The Julia Lowe birthplace in Savannah, Catherine.
Tina.
Oh, and Pam says I'm friends with her. Oh my goodness.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. Another rabbit hole.
Another rabbit hole, exactly. That's exciting. Well, again, thank you all so much. In the chat, I just put in our email, rarebooks@kennesaw.edu. If you ever want to chat with us, please do. We love to hear about things you're interested in, or if you have ideas for programs and whatnot, we would love to collaborate. So thank you all so much for attending today's meeting. I hope that you enjoyed it. I know it was kind of different, but I really appreciate you all staying and always coming each week. So I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.